Good morning. Good to see you guys. Happy 4th of July weekend. Man, I hope you had your fill of hamburgers and hot dogs and pool parties and sunburns. So good. Anybody get a sunburn? Some of you don't want to admit it, that you put on the sunscreen, but not all the places. And those are the places you feel right now. So happy 4th. And I just think it's so awesome that you decided to take part of this long weekend and invest in your faith. And be here with us here at South Hills, whether you're here in the room or whether you're watching online, listening over the podcast. And we are jumpstarting a brand new series today called Life Hacks. And it is going to be the longest series that we will do all year. It's going to take us through these next 2 months. We're going to spend 9 weeks talking through just practical ways to tackle things that feel frustrating in our lives. I think if you're like me, you get to this point in the year and maybe you've spent all the rest of the year looking forward to this point, like, man, when I get there, everything's going to be great. And then you get to summer and you're like, this is just a hotter version of another stressful season of my life. Like, the vacation didn't solve everything. School getting out didn't solve everything. I still have some things in my life that I need practical help with. And so we're going to be unpacking each one of these items. In fact, on all your chairs when you came in was an invite card so that you could sort of see where we're going to be going during the series, not just so you could know and so that you could nudge the people next to you, but so that you could invite somebody along to be a part of this series for one or several of these weeks. I think it's going to be a series that you're going to want to be sharing with people, forwarding them links, and creating good conversations around. And so today, I want to encourage you, take some notes, write some things down that stand out to you, that you feel like, man, when I get out of here today, I want to think more about that. Even if you don't agree with it, but you're just like, that's something to think about. Write it down because you'll remember it much better. And if you are taking notes, the title of my message today is Trying My Best and Still Stressed. Trying my best and still stressed. Some of you are like, I'm getting that tattoo. That is a life motto. That's how it feels to be me sometimes, right? I remember I was thinking about stress this week and about times I've been stressed, and I was thinking about back one of the worst years. I think we would all agree, 2020. It was not my favorite. And I remember one particular afternoon where so many things I felt like I was trying to hold together, and I just felt like I was being pushed to the brink. You know, trying to hold the church together, trying to hold my family together, online schooling with our children, that didn't work. Trying to manage all these things and think about finances, and it felt like the world was just constantly there was another thing and another thing and another thing going on in the news. And I was just laying on the couch, and my mind was just racing with all this stuff. And my kids were running around the house and just being kids and being a little crazy. And talking to each other and picking at each other, and then it was getting louder and louder and louder, and I was trying harder and harder to focus, and then suddenly somebody bumped something and knocked a picture off the wall, and it fell down and shattered, and it was just the thing that pushed me over the edge. Anybody had a moment like this where you're just like, I have just had enough, one more thing, and I'm gonna blow up? And it sucks to be the person that finds you in that moment, you know what I mean? It wasn't really about them, but they got it. They found out real quick that you were not in a good place, and I popped up off the couch so quick, and I was like, everybody shut up! And everybody, literally everybody in my house, probably the next 2 houses over, everyone just froze. And they were all just like, whoa. I don't normally raise my voice or anything like that. And so everyone was a little bit freaked out and hoping that they were not the person who did the offending. And I instantly felt you ever do something where you surprise yourself with your own reaction? Everyone's like, what happened? I'm like, what happened? You know what I mean? I scared myself. And so then I was just like, man. And so I went into my room because I was just like, okay, this is on me. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm going to have to go out there and apologize to my family and my kids. And I wish I could say I came to that on my own. But my wife came in and was like, you're going to have to go out there and apologize to our family and your kids. And I did. And it was like one of those moments where, you kind of slink in as the grown up and you're like, sorry about that. We shouldn't, And I'm now doing the phoning in the apology that I don't let my kids get away with. And the reason why it all happened was stress. I mean, I was just maxed out. And I wonder if you've noticed about your life when you are stressed, and we're really, really stressed, it turns you into a person that sometimes you don't even recognize. A person that does things that's out of character for you, that you don't want to be known for or known by. It's a person that maybe other people don't like to be around. Maybe it's a person you don't like to be around, right? Because you're just like, this is not who I want to be. I don't think we like how stress takes over, right? How it sort of makes us short-tempered and sick to our stomach and skittish and snippy and reactive and unreasonable and unhappy and just flat out uncomfortable to be around. And what is it that we are all so stressed about? I would argue that we stress out over whatever isn't going the way we want it to, because we have a plan for our lives, for the moment, for the way we want things to work, and when they don't, that's stressful. We find ourselves asking questions, not to anyone in particular, but just sort of frustratedly yelling them at the sky, like, why does there have to be so much political turmoil? Right? Why does everything have to be so expensive all of a sudden? Why do I have to get a second mortgage to buy eggs? Why has it got to be so hot outside? Why is there sweat dripping down my back with the air conditioning on? Why won't my boss listen to me? Like, why won't my kids just do what I tell them to do? Why won't my husband spend 30 seconds just picking up this wet towel before he goes for his 3-hour marathon on video games? And some of these questions will never be answered. But they stress us out, right? And you've tried to do something about this stuff, but maybe you feel like whatever the issue is in your life, no matter what I do, nothing ever changes. And that drains us and stresses us even more. Because the truth is, constantly trying without ever succeeding is exhausting. And we get overwhelmed when we can't get the outcomes that we're after. And this is one of the reasons I think that we are drawn to Jesus. Even if you're not like a person of faith, or you're like, I don't even know if I believe in God. One of the things we actually do like about Jesus is that he says things like this. This is in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And there's something calming and comforting about this sort of promise. But do you ever feel like you've tried to go to Jesus with something and it did not work? You're like, I tried it and nothing happened. I mean, I keep telling Jesus what's wrong, and I even give him suggestions as what to do about it. But he hasn't really done much of anything as far as I can tell. And I'll tell you this, I don't feel rested. I've come to him, and I'm still weary. In fact, I'm a little bit more angry than where I started. And I wonder what this would even look like for you. Like for you, how do you even define rest? I think for a lot of us, if we're honest, when we think about what rest would be, we're like, rest would be basically escaping from my stress. Or even better yet, like completely eradicating all my stress. You ever had a moment where you just wish that God could swoop in and just eradicate your stress in one singular moment, that you would pray a prayer and fall asleep and you would wake up the next morning and in an instant, like everything annoying, frustrating, or challenging just disappears? Some of you are like, is that possible? Like, that sounds like the dream. The only thing that could make that better is if I also woke up on a beach somewhere with a drink in my hand. That would be, while we're making wishes, I mean, I would love that. But maybe that's not your experience. And as much as you don't want to hear this, here's why even if you could get that, it wouldn't be good for you. Because as it turns out, there is no growth without stress. There's no growth without stress. And you already know this. I mean, this is a scientific fact. Muscles can't grow unless, they're exerted and stretched and torn. Plants can't grow unless they have to push up through the soil. Narrow thinking can't change unless it's challenged. Bad habits can't be uprooted unless we establish new neural pathways, which is difficult. It takes work. One New Testament author says that allowing a certain amount of stress into your life is actually God's way of showing you he loves you. How disgusting is that? You ever read a verse in the Bible and you're like, can we just cross some of them out? I mean, I don't like this one. This is what he wrote. This is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 6. It says, God disciplines those he loves and corrects all his children. Who ever heard of a child who was never disciplined? Maybe you're like, I have. They're called brats. And I've known quite a few of them. But as it turns out, you don't have to be a kid to be treated like a child in our culture. You just have to be rich or talented or codependent. Oftentimes, the trifecta of all three helps. A while back, I watched this documentary about Whitney Houston, who's a phenomenal talent, famously died of a drug overdose. And throughout this documentary, as they're exploring her life and they're talking to all these people that were very close to her and knew her really well, it's crazy to me how they're all saying, we all knew that she was an addict. We all knew that she had a problem. We all knew that she had bouts of like rage and anger. We all knew she was struggling in big ways, and we knew that she was gaining a bad reputation, but we wanted to just like insulate her and just make everything okay for her. One guy said something that I just think encapsulated like the thoughts of everybody in the documentary. He said, we felt like it was our job to just give her whatever she wanted and stay out of her way. And as soon as I heard him say that, I thought that was the decision that they made that killed her. Like that was the moment when they said, this is going to be our philosophy, that it was over for her even way before it actually was. Because the truth is, insulating someone from stress prevents them from developing healthy ways to handle it. And she had stress coming at her, but she had people interrupting it and absorbing it. And ultimately, she never developed a way to handle it. And I got to tell you, you are going to need some healthy ways to cope with stress and disappointment, because you are going to experience a lot of stress and disappointment in life. Some of you, a friend brought you and they're like, my church is really fun and encouraging. And you're like, oh, this is a weird week because I just feel sad inside. Sorry. Let's close in prayer. Lord, no. I think one of the things that's hard about this verse that we just read is this idea that God disciplines those he loves. And I think for a lot of us, it's that word discipline that we get hung up on. Maybe you have just an uncomfortable time with the word discipline. Maybe it's been used against you as a manipulation or to hurt you. But in this passage, what this author means by discipline, the biblical definition, is allowing someone to experience the right amount of stress and helping them through it in a healthy way. And I think the thing that's frustrating to me about this definition is that when you are going through stress, when you're the one who's going through something you don't want to have to go through, and it is sort of like stressing you out, it never feels like the right amount of stress. It feels like way too much. It feels like this is going to crush me. This is going to kill me. How could God do this to me? I'm never going to survive this moment. Why won't he bail me out? I wonder if you've ever like sort of just been observing somebody else's story and you're like, I don't know how they're doing it. I mean, that is an unsurvivable amount of stress. That is an unsurvivable amount of disappointment. I have these moments all the time, especially when I read through the Bible. You read through stuff and you're just like, man, how is this person going to come out the other side and not hate God, not hate life, not hate themselves? Because it just feels like way too much. I think there are a lot of these stories in Scripture, and I want to read one of them or part of one of them to you today, because I think there are some insights into how this person survived their stress that I think is the key that you need to survive the most stressful moments of your existence too. This story is found in Genesis chapter 37. We're going to start in verse 14. And it says this, that one day Joseph went to see his brothers, And when they saw him in the distance, they made plans to kill him. Just so you know what kind of story we're getting into. But one of them said, let's just throw him into an empty cistern instead. When Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off his beautiful robe and threw him in a cistern. Then a caravan of Ishmaelite traders came along, headed to Egypt, and so his brothers pulled him out and sold him into slavery. I mean, first off, that is a lot of stress. You think about like the worst moments of your life, the worst season, the worst year of your life, you probably didn't have this many stressful moments in it, and this was only like 24 hours of this guy's life. It's overwhelming. This is brutal and inhumane. I don't think anyone should ever have to go through the things that he went through, even just in that little snapshot of his life. And yet, maybe an unpopular opinion, if you read the story up till this point, you can kind of see it coming. I mean, it sort of makes sense. And I feel you like turning away. So let me just like show you what I'm talking about. This is verse 2. Genesis 37 says this. When Joseph was 17, he often tended his father's flocks with his half-brothers, and he would report back the bad things they did. Whew. Joseph's father loved him more than his other children and made a special robe for him. This made his brothers hate him even more. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream and said, "Listen to this dream. We were in a field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and yours bowed before mine." His brothers hated him all the more because of his dumb dreams and the way he talked about them. Later he said, "I had another dream. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before me." And this time his father stood up and scolded him. "Don't talk like that." I got to be honest, when I read this, I kind of want to beat this kid up and throw him in an old well. He sounds annoying. I know it's a Bible character, but let's just be real. If this was one of your family members, you'd be like, listen, somebody needs to teach him a lesson. I mean, let's just recap what we heard just from this little, he's a tattletale, first of all. Some of you are you're like, that's all I need to hear. Snitches get stitches, okay? That's how it goes. Sometimes they get thrown into cisterns. Beyond that, he's always walking around in his special sparkle jacket. "Look what my dad got me." And they're like, "He's our dad too." And he's like, "Yeah, but I got a jacket." And he's rubbing it in, and they can't stand him. Then he tells his whole family, "Hey, later on in life, you guys are all going to be my servants." You know how I know? God dreams. They couldn't stand him. He was so obnoxious. I mean, when you think about this logically, these are stupid things to say and do around insecure people prone to violence. And that's exactly who his brothers were. You know why Joseph got sold into slavery? Partially because of his crazy family, but I think in large part because he had an incredibly low EQ. Now, I don't know if you've heard this term before, but EQ stands for emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And essentially, it means the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and recognize and respond appropriately to others' emotions. And man, when you look at Joseph's story, he's got zero of this going on. Joseph is clueless about how everyone else is feeling. He's like, "My brothers love me." And everyone's like, "They hate you, man. I don't know how you can't see it. They're so happy for me about this jacket." It's like, that jacket's going to get you killed. He has no comprehension of how the things that he says and does affects other people's feelings. And although he has no EQ and it is sabotaging his life and relationships, he has no idea that this is a problem for him. Everybody else knows it, but he doesn't notice it. And I would argue this is probably the same thing that is happening in your life. That whatever it is that's holding you back is likely something that everyone else can see, but you can't. It's a blind spot. It's something that you're not even aware you do, or maybe you're aware you do it, but you don't know the impact it's having on the people and situations around you. You don't even know to address it because you're not aware it's actually that big a deal, but everyone around you is like, you ever know somebody in your life who you wonder if they know that they are causing most of their problems? Don't point to them if they're here, but you just forward them this link afterwards and be like, there's some cool spots. Maybe fast forward to this juncture. Everybody around them is just like, they're doing it again. How do they not know? How can they not see it? I wonder when they're finally going to figure it out. I mean, not all of the bad things in their life are their fault, but I mean, if we're real, like 2/3, I mean, that's them. That's what it's like to be around Joseph. And maybe you look at his story and think like, yeah, but didn't God promise that all these great things were going to happen in his life? Didn't God say that he was going to use him? Didn't God give him dreams about the future? And he did. And God meant it when he said it. But I got to tell you, just because God gave you a vision doesn't mean you're mature enough to manage it. And we have all come across this in life where God gave somebody a dream or a vision. Maybe he even gave them a skill set or a gifting, and he got them excited about it. But the people around that person was like, man, be careful. I don't know if you can handle it. I don't know if you're ready. Joseph definitely wasn't mature enough to manage the vision that God gave him, not at this point. And he learned that the hard way. The hardest way possible. Can you imagine the utter shock of thinking that your family thought you were awesome, and then they all jump out from behind the bushes and beat you half to death and throw you in an old well and then sell you into slavery? I mean, I can't imagine this kid, 17 years old, sort of waking up at the bottom of this caged-in caravan, being drug off to a country where he doesn't know the people or the language or the customs, and just like trying to figure out like, what is my life? What actually happened? He didn't see it coming. Imagine what it would feel like to suddenly learn that you were wrong, that everybody actually hated you, and you would never get to see your family again. The devastation. The shock. I mean, I wonder what I would do in that instance. I mean, my natural tendency to like a reaction to disappointment is usually depression. And so I probably would have been like, well, you know, I should have known. There's just nothing ever works out, and it's probably my fault, and there's nothing left to live for. My wife is a little bit different. Her natural reaction is usually anger. So it would have been more fun to watch her get kidnapped in this story, because she would have put up a fight. She would have been like, this isn't fair. Do you know who I am? You better not do this. I'm going to get all of you back. And then her eyes start glowing red. And I mean, these are not bad things. These are just sort of natural reactions. What makes these things bad is if you sort of get stuck in this gear and they start determining everything you say and do. Your anger or your disappointment or your depression starts calling the shots, and that becomes your personality. But this doesn't really happen to Joseph. Like, he must have had some sort of different mindset, because when we catch up to him, anger and depression aren't what define him. In fact, he was sold to this wealthy Egyptian named Potiphar and put in charge of his entire estate. And Joseph is incredibly successful, but it doesn't last. It says this in Genesis chapter 39, verse 6. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built man. Some of you are like, what is happening? I didn't see that coming. And Potiphar's wife soon began looking at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded, because I like Hebrew boys and I cannot lie. She was just, listen, everybody's got their type. And she was like, this is mine. She kept putting pressure on him. And one day, she grabbed him by his robe, but Joseph tore himself away, and she called out, Joseph tried to rape me, but I screamed, and he got away but left his robe. And her husband was furious when he heard about this and threw Joseph in prison. And every time I read this, I'm like, are you kidding? More betrayal? How? I mean, one of the things that is easy to observe when you look at this guy's life, one, don't lend him a robe, because this guy is losing robes right and left. Cannot hang on to clothes. So that's just a practical tip for you and your closet. But the other thing that we see about this guy is that, man, he just keeps finding himself in situations he never wanted to be in. And I can imagine him wondering, like, why does this keep happening to me? Like, I'm trying my best. I'm trying to do what I know how to do to make everything work out the way that I need it to. Like, does God not like me? Is he mad at me? Like, were all those dreams that he gave me not real? But as it turns out, Joseph is not at all like me. And even though he's in prison, he exudes so much stability and positivity and likability that he earns the admiration of the other inmates and the guards and the warden. And despite everything that has happened to him, he is still making the most of his life, which is unbelievably impressive. And I wonder, like, how are you able to do that? It reminds me of something that one of the New Testament authors, James, the brother of Jesus, wrote in his book in the New Testament. He says this: when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. You know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. And when it does, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. In other words, what he's saying here is, you can't choose your circumstances, but you can choose how to frame them and respond to them. Which means other people can make you uncomfortable, but only you can make yourself miserable. Because misery is refusing to feel good about your life unless you get everything you want. And here's why that's a bad idea. You will never get everything you want. And this is the kind of encouragement you can count on week after week after week here at South Hills. You are going to encounter frustration and disappointment. And this author says that when you face these disappointing moments, that when you choose to make peace with the fact that not everything is going to go your way, and choosing joy in spite of it, that you will become perfect, which is a confusing word for us because, again, this is a word we define through our Western lens instead of through an ancient biblical lens. What the author means here by the word perfect is you will become whole and complete, and knowing that you don't need to be or do anything more to be at peace or like your life. And I would argue this is the thing that we are all chasing. And we think if we just try a little bit harder, if we just do a little bit more, if we just stress and then react to that stress and try and be in control of things, then maybe we can get it all together and finally experience peace. But the perfection that you are longing for doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from trusting God deeper. And maybe you're like, well, how do I respond well when I feel like everything is falling apart, when it isn't going the way I want it to? And that's a great question, and James was smart enough to know that you were going to ask it, and so he answers it in the very next verse. He says this: if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he'll give it to you. And maybe you're thinking, not true, okay? I hate to call you out, James, but not true, okay? Because God never tells me what I want to know. Maybe you're one of the people that's just like, I feel like I ask God questions all the time. He doesn't give me any answers. He doesn't tell me what I want to know. And I wonder, like, is it that God is not answering your prayers or that you are asking the wrong kinds of questions? Tell me this. How many of your prayers are really just you asking God to help you get everyone else to do what you want them to do? It always gets quiet during that part. You're like, God, you got to help me convince them that they're wrong. God, you got to help me get her to do what we both know she should. God, you got to help me get my boss on my side because he's about to make a mistake and I know the way. And here's what's wrong with these questions. They're about you trying to control other people, situations, and outcomes. And that's God's job, not yours. Which means you're going to have to trust him to do his job instead of trying to do it for him. And I got to tell you, trusting God doesn't grant us control of other people and circumstances. In fact, it frees us from the need to control other people and circumstances. Because as it turns out, controlling other people is not a fruit of the Spirit. Self-control is. A byproduct of actually trusting God isn't that you get to control everything. It's that you're like, I don't even feel the need to control everything because God has given me the ability to partner with him to control myself in this situation and trust him to take care of the rest. That's what breakthrough looks like in our lives, but often we don't want it. I gotta tell you, God loves it when you pray, but he is not interested in talking to you about everybody else. He wants to talk to you about you. But I got to tell you, if you're looking for wise answers from him, you need to ask wise questions. Maybe you're like, I'd love to. What are they? And I'm not going to make you guess. I'm going to tell you. I think these are the 4 wisest questions you could ask God when you are stressed, overwhelmed, and disappointed. The 4 questions I believe Joseph asked God frequently in his life. Number 1, what can I learn? Number 2, where can I grow? Number 3, where can I let go? And number 4, how can I serve? Because these questions are about what God wants you to do about you in this moment. Think of how this changes everything. Like, okay, God, this isn't all my fault, but there's something for me to learn about what's going on. Maybe it's learning about other people. Maybe it's learning about the way the world works. Maybe it's learning a truth I didn't understand. Maybe it's learning something about myself. Where can I grow? I can't make them do anything, but there are steps I can take to change some things about me and the way that I think and the way that I talk and the way that I live. What do I need to let go of? What is the thing that I keep trying to control that keeps making me angry because it is uncontrollable? And I got to tell you, if that thing is a person for you, the more you keep trying to control them, the more infuriated you're going to become because it can't be done. And God, how can I serve in this situation? Because I'm thinking about everything I want, but what is it that I can do and give and provide and add value through? These 4 questions change everything. And the reason they're the right questions is because self-awareness is the beginning of wisdom. And I believe that the beginning of self-awareness is actually asking these questions of God and letting him tell you who you are. I have no doubt that Joseph was asking and acting on these right questions because what you can see is that as his story evolves, he grows in wisdom. It says this in Genesis chapter 40, verse 6, that one morning in prison, Joseph saw Pharaoh's imprisoned cupbearer and baker, and he noticed that they looked upset. Why do you look so worried? And they replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied, but go ahead and tell me yours. And I wonder if you caught this. This to me is one of the most miraculous pieces of this story, and I think we skip over it when we read these passages. It's just these 2 little words. He noticed. He noticed. In other words, Joseph, in prison, when things are not going well for him, looked at somebody else and sensed what they were feeling and cared about it. That's new. Like, this is the same guy who couldn't tell his own brothers hated him, and everybody else was like, don't go on this trip, they're going to kill you. This is the same guy who, he couldn't tell that bragging about certain things in front of people who always wished they had what he had was actually not helpful to those people's lives and push their buttons. The guy who, was always constantly telling people, hey, you're going to end up serving me is now serving other people. The guy who was constantly monologuing about his own dreams is sitting down and listening to everyone else's. This is a changed man. He's become a different person. This is an incredible display of EQ for someone who got thrown into prison for not having any EQ. And I have no doubt that he ended up in this place because when stress flooded his life and things didn't go his way, he asked God for wisdom. The sort of wisdom that allowed him to acknowledge and address his blind spots and make peace with the things that he could not control. And over time, he became someone who could actually manage the vision God had always had for him. But the growth came through stress. And it wasn't stress that God heaped on him, but it was stress that God allowed him to healthily manage, to break through and grow and evolve and become better so he could do and handle more. So he could actually get where God always intended to take him, but he knew there's going to be some things he had to go through in order to get there. And I just wonder, what if you adopted Joseph's pattern? What if you could stop being dominated by stress and experience the wholeness and completeness that comes from knowing you don't need to be or do anything else to be at peace and like your life? If you read the rest of the story, you realize that Joseph, through interpreting these dreams with the power of God, is pulled out of the prison and put in the palace. And I think we think that that is the best ending to the story because that's when things actually pan out for him. But here's what I actually believe. The peace and joy that Joseph experienced in life didn't come in the palace, they came in the prison. I think it was because Joseph got to a place where he learned to be at peace in the prison. He learned that he had a purpose in the prison. He learned that he could actually enjoy life in prison. That God was like, oh, now that you don't need all this, I can give it to you because you can handle it. God promotes him because he was at peace without the promotion. And I just wonder, what is the thing that you are trying to force to happen in your life so that you can have everything you want, so that you can be as happy as you want to be? And I would tell you that that is hollow. And that if you ask God for the wisdom in your life, he will empower you to, no matter what is facing you, be able to walk through it, go through it, learn from it, and actually have joy even in the midst of it. So here's your homework this week. When you feel overwhelmed by the stress of what you can't control, I want you to pause and pray. God, what can I learn? Where can I grow? Where can I let go? And how can I serve in this situation? God, what can I learn? Where can I grow? Where can I let go? And how can I serve in this situation? I think if you open-heartedly ask these questions, God will freely give you the answers to them. And you acting on those answers will transform you in the midst of your situation. And that will begin to transform the situation. But even if it doesn't, you don't need it. I want to pray that God would give you this ability this week, and that the ability he gives you to do this week would ripple into the next week and the next week and the next week. And that God begins to talk to you and deal with you about you, that it would begin to ripple out and transform everything you touch. Would you bow your heads with me as we just pray this into our lives today? God, we are so grateful for your love and your grace and your mercy. God, if we're honest, we all are carrying a certain amount of stress. When we think about being weary and burdened, we know what that means. There are a lot of things that we are carrying around, that we are trying to control, that we are trying to make happen. And And God, you are inviting us to lean into you, to have a conversation with you about us, to not spin our wheels, stressed out, trying harder, but to trust you on a deeper level and to ask you in the midst of this situation, there's all this stuff I can't control, God, but you want to give me self-control. And so, God, what can I learn? Where can I grow? Where can I let go? And how can I serve? And God, as we hear your answers and as we respond and take action according to what you say, God, may we notice that we are changing, that we are transforming, and that is impacting everything we touch. God, I pray that you would grow us through our stress, that instead of just making it evaporate, you would empower us to manage it well and to leverage it, to ready ourselves for the dreams and visions that you are readying for us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.